So with no further ado, I would like to introduce Trevor. Trevor's been a very close friend of mine since, what, I followed you on Instagram since 2019, maybe a little bit more than that. But we got closer just a little bit after COVID. And he's just a very humble man. You know, he carries himself with the respect, integrity to go beyond just providing a service. You know, he's somebody that will go to bat for you, somebody that will look at your situation and find ways to support that for you and not just sell you a product or a service, right? So without further ado, you guys help me welcome Trevor. Trevor, open up.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for taking time out today of your busy schedule and learning about biblical financial wisdom. So I have a question for you. During COVID, what do you think Canadians' greatest fear was? Anybody want to guess? Shout it out. Yes? Losing their job? Yeah, very close. It's money. So 40% of Canadians' greatest fear is money. Okay? Only 18% of Canadians feel like they have good knowledge about finances. 7 in 10 Canadians don't even have a financial plan. It's pretty rare. So I am a certified financial planner. I've been practicing for over 23 years. I know I look like I'm 23, but I'm a little bit older than that. I started when I was really young. So I just got a passion for financial literacy. I saw my parents fight over money. I know that people, their greatest concern is money. We just started teaching money in the schools just recently, and even that curriculum, is kind of lacking. It's another language. I mean, think about this. Did you learn about all these concepts in school? A TFSA, an RSP, a LIRA, how to do your taxes, how you're taxed, what happens when you're retired, Canada pension plan, old age security, retirement, estate planning, wills. We don't hear much about this stuff, yet it's so important. Okay, so today I want to give you some practical information from a biblical worldview. So I am also a certified kingdom advisor, so I incorporate biblical wisdom into my plans or practice. Hosea says, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." God gives wisdom, and out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. And the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the holy is understanding. Finish this sentence. I will be content when I have. When I was young, it was, I want to get a car. And I got the car. God, I'm going to serve you more when I get that car. I didn't necessarily serve him more when I got that car, okay? I want to get a house. I want to get married. I want to get kids. The truth is, you're never going to be content. God designed us in a way where we're never going to be filled with those things. The truth is, we're created in the image of God, and we really need him at the end of the day to feel fulfilled, okay? The Bible says, godliness with contentment is great gain. You brought nothing into this world. You're not going to take anything out with you, okay? Having food and clothing, we can be content, right? Okay. But they that want to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, into many foolish, hurtful lusts, which drown men into destruction and perdition. We're among the top country in the world for consumerism, okay? So we're up there. We consume a lot. And we do it a lot with debt, unfortunately. Who do you think ranks the highest in mental anxiety and mental illness in the world? Which nations, which countries? Anybody like to guess? US? Yeah, we're North America, we're up there. We have the most money. In fact, if you make over $20,000, you're among the top 10% wealthiest in the world, okay? We have the most money, we consume the most, but we have the most mental illness. Hell and destruction are never full, so the eyes of men are never satisfied. No matter how much videos you watch, movies, how much music, you're never going to hear enough, okay? He that loves silver should not be satisfied with silver, nor he that loves abundance with increase. This also is vanity, okay? So obviously, I'm not here to preach you a prosperity gospel, okay? This is not like a get-rich type of thing. God does want to bless you, but for specific purposes. Why can't we be satisfied? Because God has set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy, to do good while they live, to eat and drink, and to find satisfaction in their toil and their work. Right? This is a concept I want to talk to you about later on, is work. God blessed work at least 7 times in the beginning of creation, and it is an eternal concept. Okay? God said, let us make us in his image. And God gave us a job to have dominion over the earth, the fish of the sea, the fowl of the air, the cattle, every creeping thing. So God made us in his own image to have dominion, right? How would you like to guess? How many verses do you think there are in the Bible about money and stewardship? Just throw a number out there. Guess. Don't be shy. Kester, yeah? Yeah, throw out a number. How many verses do you think? Yes. 400? Okay. Higher? Yeah? 1,000? Yeah? 2,000? Yeah, you're right on. There's 2,300 verses in the Bible about money and stewardship. We rarely talk about these things. Everything from how to run your own recession-proof economy, how to tax your people for a nation, how to handle debt, why you shouldn't co-sign, why you should leave an inheritance to your children's children, how you should invest, why you should protect some of your assets. Everything is in there. Okay? Who owns it all? Right? God owns it all, right? We get the bill, we get the account in our name, but it's not really yours. You can't take it with you. You're really a steward. Okay? So if we're a steward, what's the role? I mean, Scripture is pretty clear. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. The heavens of heavens is the Lord's, your God. The earth also and all that there is in the heaven. And then, Haggai says, the silver is mine, the gold is mine. It all belongs to him, right? The Bible says, lay not up for yourself treasures upon earth, where moth and rust corrupt, where thieves break in and steal. But lay rather, what's the alternative? So rather than laying it on earth, you can lay it up in heaven, where neither moth or rust is corrupt, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, your heart will be there also. Do you think when everybody gets to heaven, they're going to receive the same reward? I'm not talking about salvation. I'm talking about the saints. When they get to heaven, do you think everybody will receive the same reward? Right? What does the Bible teach? The Bible teaches that, in Revelation, there's 144 virgins. They alone know the song of the Lamb, and they follow it. Nobody else knows the song. There's the right hand, there's the left hand of God. There's different levels of heaven. The Bible specifically tells us he's going to reward us according to our works, okay? And he wants us to be motivated this way. There's nothing wrong with being motivated with treasure in heaven. It shows that you have faith, because wherever you put your treasure, your heart's going to be there, right? Often in life, we don't do things until we feel like it. But the truth is, you're never going to feel like it. I never felt like picking myself up and doing financial planning. I just put my treasure there, and my heart eventually followed, right? Godliness and contentment is great gain. Okay, so we talked about that earlier. Money is the root of all evil? No, that's a misconception. The love of money is the root of all evil, right? Money is just a tool. It's an ideal. A lot of it isn't even real. They're promissory notes. Okay? So when I do financial planning, I always try to get my clients to understand that they're stewards, God owns it all, and how should you manage God's money? So one, do you believe it belongs all to God? Are you content with food and clothing? One thing you should also find out and work with is how much is enough. Until you define in your life how much is enough and you set a ceiling on your lifestyle, you'll never know how much is enough. And then you won't be free to give and invest in the kingdom of God, okay? Faith, do I believe that I demonstrate my faith through my finances? Do I believe that God gives wisdom? So I want to share that wisdom with you today, okay? So if God owns everything, what's my role? You're a steward. You can see there's many scriptures here. I'm going to give this slide to Sunil so he can share that with you. You can go through all of this, okay? I got a lot of slides today, so please bear with me. Okay. So usually when I build a financial plan, I frame it this way. I build it on 5 biblical principles. Spend less than you earn, okay? Because if you're spending, then you can never save if you don't, save money and have a positive cash flow. Avoid the use of bad debt. Debt mortgages the future and is a form of enslavement. Plan for financial margin. Life happens, right? So it is biblical to plan for that, have an emergency fund, and plan for famine, like Joseph, right? Set long-term goals. You got an 80% chance of living past age 80. You know, God said we're going to live to 120 maximum, so, you know, you might want to plan. You might live a long time. And give generously, most importantly. Okay? You can really only spend your money to live, give, or grow. Right? So I have a couple savings boxes. If any of you have small children, nieces or nephews, I got a couple of them. You can have one for free. It just teaches you to save to live, give, or grow. So sometimes when my daughters, they raise money through like, you know, lemonade stands, you know, I give them, they get cash and I tell them, you know, save for these different reasons. You know, if you owe some money, put some money in, you shouldn't because you're young. If you should save when you're young, you should save some money for living expenses and more importantly to give. Okay? And then I give my clients a chart of what to do next in each spending category. If you got debt, pay off high interest debt, then pay off the mortgage. If you need to give, different ways of giving, right? So hopefully you have an eternal perspective on your finances, because what you do in this life dictates your eternity, right? Pretty significant, okay? We only live like 80 years if we're lucky, right? According to the Psalm. So treasure in heaven. So we talked about this earlier, you know, laying up treasure in heaven. You can lay up treasure in heaven. I'll talk to you about the rate of return on that as well. The Bible talks a lot about different rewards. You know, him that overcomes will I grant to sit with me in my throne. You know, we read over this stuff. We don't realize what he's talking about here. Like, we get to sit in heavenly thrones with the Father. You know, other things like being able to eat from the tree of life, many different crowns. Yeah, the tree of life, right? I won't read through all this because I don't think I have enough time. Okay, when you give to God, or whatever you do, do it as though you're doing it for God, right? Giving power over the nations, giving people the morning star. So pretty significant stuff that we can't even comprehend, right? So today I want to give you some practical things on how to manage your finances biblically. I want to give you wisdom and counsel from one of the wealthiest persons to ever have lived in history. Anybody want to guess who that is? Jesus. Well, I mean like actual, yes, spiritually, but physical like wealth. Who do you think was the wealthiest person monetarily wise to exist? Solomon, yeah. King Solomon would have been worth $2.2 trillion in today's money. One of the wealthiest, up there with Man Musa, okay? He had a tremendous amount of wealth. He had a recession-proof economy that I want to talk to you about later. And fortunately for us, he wrote down a lot of his wisdom for us. So a lot of this is available for us to apply today, right? Where no counsel is, the people fall. But in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. Without counsels, purposes are disappointed, but in the multitude of counselors, they are established. Buying a home, you know, significant things that you want to accomplish, seek counsel. Finance is another language, literally. Like, so I'm just a translator. That's all I do. I just translate another language for you, and hopefully you can understand it. But I do advise you, you know, seek somebody you can trust. It doesn't have to be me to give you counsel on these matters, okay? I am an independent advisor. You know, I do have access to different companies and stuff like that, but I more or less go through a planning process with my clients first, because there's so many things I can offer out there. I really don't know what's best for you until I really get to know your situation. So I don't work for any of these companies. I work for my clients. You know, the rest of this just talks about privacy and how you maintain your privacy. Because if you're willing to listen to me talk about biblical financial wisdom, I don't charge for my financial counseling or planning. You can ask me any type of financial question you want. I used to be a mortgage broker. I can help people fix credit, cash flow, investments, estate planning, anything financial, okay? Okay, financial planning process. Usually I'll give my clients like a list of things to do, because there's a lot, okay? I'll sit down with you, I'll help you figure out your cash flow, make sure you're not spending more than you earn, helping you pay off debt. And I'll basically just go through like kind of some practical things you can do out here, okay? First thing is you should keep an account. You should know what you're bringing in and what you're spending as a steward, right? So do a cash flow. I'll help you do this. If you don't know how to do this, you just take your income minus your expenses. Hopefully you get a positive cash flow. And then we divide that cash flow into different areas. Do you need to pay off debt? Do you need to save for a house? Do you need to retire at a certain age? Do you need to grow that money? Maybe you need to do all of those things at once, okay? A net worth statement, your assets minus your liabilities. And And then I usually give them this chart here. So it just shows you that economic conditions and biblical principles are transcended. They're always going to be there in the background. The economy is always going to be doing this. The Word of God is always going to be there. But you're going to be going through different stages in your life, whether it be saving for emergency plan, paying off debt, buying a car. So it just shows you a sequence on how you should pursue things, okay? Banking. So I personally bank with this bank. They give you high interest. It's one of the only 2 banks in Canada that do this that I know of. They actually pay you on a checking account. Right now it's 1.5%. This is who I bank with. This is an article you can read on your free time. This one in particular is Manulife Bank. There's no fees if there's $1,000 there and you get paid to bank. You should not be paying banking fees. Every dollar you give the bank, they can create $10 of money that does not exist through credit cards or mortgages. There's no reason why you should be paying bank fees. They should be paying you. Okay, so get paid to bank. Avoid the use of bad debt. So oftentimes clients will ask me, what should I invest in? And if I know they have credit card debt, I'll tell them to pay off their credit card debt. I'll ask them, hey, if you give me money to invest and I can guarantee you a rate of return of 20%, would you give me your money to invest? Everybody says yes, because who doesn't want 20%? I tell them, just pay off your credit card. It's the same thing. In fact, the more taxes, the higher your tax bracket, the higher the equivalent rate of return it is to pay off debt. So if you're in 20% a credit card and you're in the lowest tax bracket, it's like earning 25% guaranteed on investment. So just pay off your debt, okay? Try to consolidate debts into a lower interest rate. Try to avoid debt. Try not to overcommit things. Avoid like really long-term car loans. They can be like a mortgage payment almost. Pay attention to the interest rate. The interest can really work against you. There's a rule called the rule of 72 where you take your interest rate divided by 72 and it tells you how long it will take for your money to double. Okay, so if you earn 12%, your money will double every 6 years. But the issue with that is it usually works against you in the form of credit cards and mortgages because those are the only things that actually charge you 20% every single year. Investments don't necessarily work like that. You don't get 12% every single year, right? You get an average up and down rate of return, okay? So pay off debt. Does God want you to be in debt? No, he does not want you to be in debt. Owe no man anything but to love one another, okay? The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender, right? Slavery is not done away with. Even in old-fashioned form, it's happening in parts of the world today, but this is another form of it, okay? Are you called to be a servant? Care not for it. But if you may be made free, use that rather. For he that is called in the Lord being a servant is the Lord's freeman. Likewise, he that is called being free is the Lord's servant. You were bought with a price. Be not servants of men. God wants you to be free. Okay? The wicked borrow and pay not again. So if you borrow money, make sure you have a plan to pay it back. Because if you can't pay it back, you might end up like this, and you don't want to end up down this road. Okay? I, the Lord, love judgment. I hate robbery for burnt offering. You have to be careful that you're not in a position where you're taking funds or money that is not right for you to have and then trying to give that to God. God doesn't want that, okay? Right? He wants your heart. He wants obedience, right? If you know about anybody in debt who's maxed out their credit cards or line of credits, let me know. I can refer them to a nonprofit organization that will lower their interest rate close to 0%. It's not a consumer proposal. It's not a bankruptcy. Again, I believe you should pay back the debt just without all that usury and interest. Okay? It shows up on Equifax for 3 years. It's much better for your credit. It doesn't even show up on TransUnion. You can't use your credit cards or line of credits when you're on that program. But if you max out your limit, you can't use them anyways. So. Credit cards, try to get a cashback credit card with no annual fee. Most point systems equate to 1% cashback. So just get a good cashback credit card. Okay? If you're going to renovate your house, Home Depot gives you a credit card. They'll give you interest free for like 2 years. I bought like all my appliances, renovated my whole house. I didn't pay them for 2 years interest free. So take advantage of that. First-time home buyers. So if you are a first-time home buyer or you have a child as a first-time home buyer or know somebody, there's a couple programs you can take advantage of. The government is desperately trying to make housing affordable for first-time home buyers. So a couple of things you can do is a first-time home buyers plan. If you've got RSPs, you can borrow up to $60,000 from that RSP, so $120,000 per couple. And it's a tax-free loan, and you pay it back by buying 1/15 of that RSP back each year after the 5th year. If you don't buy it back, it just gets added to your income. No big deal, okay? So you don't technically have to pay it back. But did you know banks are not allowed to put a loan against your RSP? So for that reason, you can take an RSP loan put in an RSP, and in 90 days, you can create $60,000 of down payment out of nothing. Okay? This doesn't work for everybody. You have to have good enough cash flow to do this, and you have to have little to no debt. Because what I'll tell you to do is go to a mortgage broker, get a pre-approval with the RSP loan considered in the pre-approval so that you can qualify for both. Okay? If you can pay the mortgage and the RSP loan and still have positive cash flow, then it might work for you. Okay? Other things you could do is, so you may want to save your RSP room for stuff like that, like use other people's money for the RSP, and then you can buy an FHSA, First-Time Home Savers Account. That allows you to have a tax deduction just like the RSP. So with the RSP loan, you put a large amount in, you're probably getting a large tax deduction. And also, you want to try to put down 20% on a home, because if you don't, the bank will force you to buy CMHC insurance, and it doesn't even protect you. I had a client got foreclosed on his house. CMHC pays the bank and turns around and goes after the client for the money. And that can cost you 10, 20, 30 grand loaded upfront to your mortgage, just because you didn't put 20%. So these are ways where you can put more down payment, okay? So the RSP, you get a large tax receipt from that. Same with the FHSA. The only difference is with the FHSA, you can withdraw it tax-free in the first 15 years for your first home, and you don't have to buy it back. Okay, so it's much better for a first-time home buyer. You can put $8,000 a year up to a maximum of $40,000. You got 15 years to buy a house. If you don't use it, you can transfer it to your RSP. You can withdraw it if it's taxable if you withdraw it, so don't do that. And you can transfer it to another FHSA if you want. Okay, so. Okay, I'm not going to go through this. This just goes through more of that, just more detail. So when you get the guide, you can go through that. If you got a mortgage, consider paying your mortgage accelerated weekly or bi-weekly accelerated. It just means you put an extra $50 or $100 onto it, and you'll end up saving tens of thousands of dollars. This person was able to save $9,000. I don't know where you're going to find this mortgage anymore. 2%, that doesn't exist anymore. And the mortgage is only like less than $400,000. So you can imagine if it's a higher interest rate and a much larger mortgage, you're going to save a lot more money. I have this special mortgage. It's with Manulife. Manulife and National Bank are the only two banks I know that do this in Canada. I used to be a mortgage broker. I didn't even know about this because you had to take a special training course for this. It's a line of credit, a mortgage, and a bank account all in one account. So basically, all you're doing is you just change the way you bank. Okay, so I got this for my rental property. I lived in the house. I rented it out. I paid off my mortgage in less than 10 years with this. Okay, it's an interest-only mortgage, and technically, what you do is you funnel all your pay into it. So as soon as it hits the account, it's saving you simple daily interest. This is not compound interest. It's simple daily interest. And what happens is, even though the interest rate is higher with my mortgage, I still save more interest than a lower interest rate mortgage because I'm prepaying my mortgage like double, triple, and by the 4th to 7th year, I'm actually paying less interest even though I have a higher interest rate. So don't be so concerned about interest rate. Think about how much interest am I actually going to pay, okay? It's technically an interest-only mortgage, so if I don't pay my mortgage, the interest will just accrue against my equity until I have no more equity, and then they'll foreclose on me. So I can keep my house if I can't work or pay my mortgage for decades. Okay, so this is a great planning tool. Once you pay off your house, like me, it sits against your house. They won't let anybody secure a second lien against your house, so it sits against your house as mortgage protection, as mortgage fraud protection. And it basically transforms your house into a bank account. You can access your equity anytime through a card or a checkbook. I was able to close a real estate deal with this. I took money from my rental property, bought my real estate. I waived the financing clause, and back then that was very rare, so I got a big discount on my property. And then I eventually sold that house. I'll show you what I did with that later. And then I paid off my mortgage, and now I have access to my equity. And this also works good as a customized reverse mortgage. I can access money out of my equity anytime when I'm retired. And why that's important is because when you get older and you start to retire, you won't have that income to qualify for stuff like this anymore. So it's important that only if you're good with debt, okay? My only caution with this is if you're not good with debt and you feel like you're gonna get yourself into trouble by having access to your equity, do not do this, okay? You have to be disciplined to do this. This is not for everybody, okay? But if you're disciplined with debt, this is a great way to pay off your mortgage literally in half the time by simply changing the way you bank, okay? Plan for financial margin, so risk management. In Canada, everybody should have a power of attorney. A power of attorney is a document, is a living will. If you become incapacitated, you can't make a decision for yourself, you designate somebody to do that for you. This lady's husband got into a car accident. They didn't have a power of attorney. He went into a coma. Everything that was jointly owned, she had to go through the public guardian trust to get anything done. The house, the bank accounts, made her life a nightmare just because she didn't have this piece of paper. You can download a free kit, POA Ontario kit. Two witnesses assigned at the same time as you. It's valid, but I advise you go see a lawyer about this. Okay? Really important to have. Emergency funds. You should have emergency funds. Stuff happens in life, you know. The righteous receive the evil and hideth himself, right? The Bible is constantly telling us of wars and rumors of wars and famine and all these things. Like Joseph had a dream and he knew famine was coming and he told Pharaoh, save grain because famine is coming for 7 years, right? It's biblical. The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down. So don't spend everything you have. Have an emergency fund, okay? Go to the ant. Consider its way. Be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores the provision in the summer and gathers its food at harvest. Even ants.
So Trevor,
Yeah.
with the emergency fund, right?
Yeah.
I know we spoke about it a lot with us. Is a tax savings account coming up soon, or it's one of those the seg funds?
I'll talk about that later. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna let them know like some practical stuff.
Emergency
tools
fund.
and stuff.
It should not be invested in anything that's too volatile. It shouldn't be going because you probably need the money when things are going down, anyways, right? So it should be probably in something liquid like high interest or something pretty safe. Yeah. It can be in a TFSA, but you don't want to get used to withdrawing from your TFSA. But the emergency fund is fine because you only withdraw it during emergency. Okay? Here's a proverb from King Solomon. He's basically telling you can't eat your money. Maybe you should invest in things you can actually eat. Anybody into food or gardening or farming? Yeah? Okay. So interesting to note, in Canada, if you buy a piece of land and use it solely for fishing or farming, you can pass that on tax deferred almost indefinitely. That's why you see a lot of farmers never sell the property. You just keep on passing it down and down, okay? If you're not gonna buy a farm, then that's fine. Check out this resource. He gives you free recipes on how to make your own organic pesticides, fertilizers, even melt sulfur without heat as a herbicide. I personally made these myself. They work. In fact, his pesticide was so powerful, South Korean companies couldn't sell pesticides anymore because of this guy, okay? And he gives a lot of this information for free. He's got a book on Amazon. It's worth its weight in gold. Definitely check it out. If someone were to ask you, what's your most valuable financial asset you own or possess, what would you say it is? What do you think it is? Clue, you have something very valuable, all of you. Yeah? Yeah. Your health is your wealth. If you look at this chart and you look how old you are and how much you make per year, you're probably gonna make millions of dollars from now to age 65. You're your most valuable financial asset. If you had a goose that could lay golden eggs, which would you protect? The goose that lays the golden eggs or the golden eggs? Right? Everybody tells me the goose because you can always get more golden eggs, but the reality is most Canadians, we're insuring the golden egg. You got home insurance, you got car insurance, which you should have, but the likelihood of you making a claim on that is 1 in 1,000 for home insurance, car insurance less than 1 in 300 chance. For critical illness, it used to be 1 in 3. For cancer alone, is 1 in 2 in your lifetime. How many people know somebody who's had cancer, right? I've lost a lot of people to cancer, unfortunately. I had to bury 2 35-year-olds last year to cancer, right? I believe this statistic because I've experienced it so much, and I know they're putting things in our food and our water and all sorts of things, and there's a lot of toxins that we need to detox from, right? So this is your greatest risk. If you get insurance for anything, you should protect yourself against this because you got a 50% chance of this happening, okay? If you don't fast twice a week and eat a whole foods diet, you should definitely think about this, okay? If you're young, you can pass the risk on to an insurance company. It's pretty cheap to do, and you can almost do it for free, okay? So this is one of my policies. I bought this maybe like 5 to 7 years ago. They don't actually offer this anymore, but I paid into it for 20 years, about just under $2,000 per year, and then after 20 years, I'm paid up. It lasts the rest of my life. It covers me for $100,000 if I get any of the 26 illnesses, or if I want to cancel it, I'll take all my money back, tax-free guaranteed. So the only thing I paid was the opportunity cost. What was my opportunity cost saving $200 a month? If it's an emergency fund, probably not much, right? So if you're young, you can pass the risk on to an insurance company almost for free and take all your money back. If you're older, you may want to just have a year's worth of your savings or a home equity line of credit, just in case, okay? And take care of your health. Yeah.
When it comes down to children, what does that look like for families to be able to?
So for my kids, if you have the funds for it, I buy them a saving policy too because it's pretty cheap. I got them $100,000 when they were first born, and they pay like under $1,000 a year for 20 years and last the rest of their life. And if I cancel it, I get all my money back, right? So the whole point is if my kids get sick, I'm gonna have to take time work to take care of them. So.
And that's transferable at a certain age once they get.
Yeah, I can transfer ownership to them tax-free if I want to. Yeah, they can take it over and then they can take the cash from it if they want. Yeah.
Perfect.
Disability. So if you work with the employer, you probably have some form of disability insurance. Yeah?
Yeah.
You got a question? Yes, yes, yeah. Yeah. This is a small group, so it can be more interactive. Sure. Yeah, sure. Do you have a question?
Okay, I didn't.
So disability is the second most likely to occur. If you have an employer, you might have this covered. If you earn really high income, though, it might not be covered, okay? Most of the claims for disability are mental disorders, actually, which is kind of surprising. And for critical illness, no surprise, it's mainly cancer, okay? And why I talk about this is because 50% of home closures happen because of disability or illness, not because of death. Most people are only insuring it against death, right? So you should really think about this risk first, okay? The difference between critical illness and disability insurance, I won't go through that too much. If you don't get anything, you're protected by Canada Pension Plan. They'll give you a monthly benefit if you're totally disabled for the rest of your life. You have to be severely disabled to get that. EI is only on the job, and same with work comp. So, and if you earn too much income, your extra income might not be covered. So you may want to talk to an advisor about insuring the rest or covering it somehow. Okay. Okay, this is interesting. This is God's expectation of government, right? So it says here in Romans 13, let every soul be subject to the higher powers, basically because they're a minister of God for the express purpose of punishing evil. So that's God's expectation of government. Prior to World War I, all nations collected only 10% tax. That's all they needed to do their job, right? That's all God expects from government. If you add up all the different taxes we pay, HST, income tax, gas tax, property tax, you're taxed like 7 different ways, okay? We pay more in taxes than basic necessities. Taxes is one of the greatest erosions of your wealth out here. Here's another interesting scripture. I'm sure you're all familiar with, them asking, should we pay Caesar taxes? And Jesus saying, render to Caesar's what is Caesar's, right? But here's another interesting one. There came to Capernaum, and he received a tribute money, came to Peter and said, does your master pay tribute? And he says, yeah. And when he was coming to the house, Jesus prevented him, saying, what thinkest thou, Simon? Of whom do the kings of the earth take custom or tribute? Their own children or of strangers? Peter said to them, strangers. Jesus said to him, then the children are free. Notwithstanding, lest we should offend him, go to the sea, cast in the hook, get the coin from the fish, and pay him. Okay? So God is saying that we're free. Think about it. The Bible says that the saints are going to judge angels, right? So it's probably better for you to give your money directly to those causes that God is encouraging you to do, rather than rely on the government to do that for you. It usually doesn't end well when you do that. I talked about that. This is interesting. This is called the Tyler cycle. It's a theory that says that democracy is temporary in nature because people will just vote for the government that pays them the most money. And every civilization has gone through this already. It usually lasts 200 years. And yeah, that's what happens. So the whole point of this is you shouldn't pay more taxes than you're legally obligated to pay, and you should not rely on your government to do everything for you. Okay? So here's a list of things that are tax-free in Canada. Pretty short list. You got TFSAs, FHSAs. You buy your first home, it's tax-free, and the only other thing that's tax-free in Canada is life insurance. Okay? Everything else on this list you can't really invest in. Okay? So pretty short list. Life insurance is probably the most misunderstood financial vehicle out there. Okay? Half of my career, I probably didn't even understand this stuff myself. Okay? It's got a very old history, came from noble causes. People who couldn't bury their loved ones, the community came together. Even some churches have started some of these insurance companies. Okay? Why do you need insurance? You got debt. You want to be able to pay that debt. Remember, if you got debt, you got to have a plan to pay it back. Insurance is one of those ways where you can pay back debt. You replace income. My first claim was my friend. He passed away when he's 26 from lymphoma cancer. He left behind a wife with a 1-year-old child and a mortgage. I got him just enough insurance to pay off the mortgage. His wife ended up having to remortgage the house, go back to work while trying to grieve with a 1-year-old child. Not a fun experience. So try to replace your income. Okay? And you can do that with term insurance. It's really cheap. Other reasons why you may want to consider life insurance is if you own a corporation, a holding company like me. It's one of the only ways you can invest in a corporation tax-free, and one of the largest ways you can create a tax-free dividend in a corporation. And it's one of the only ways to invest in a trust tax-free. Okay? If you're not incorporated and you have the ability to max out your tax-free savings account, then this is something you should also consider as well. In Canada, we have something called capital gains tax. So if you have a non-registered investment and you make $100, half of that gets included in your income, and you're probably going to give the government $25. Okay, so 25% on every $100 that you make. They haven't changed this in 26 years. They were proposing to change this in 2021, so I sold my house because I don't want to pay more taxes than I need to. And the other problem is I don't know what the tax rate is going to be when I pass away or when I sell that house. So I just sold the house. Okay? I usually will sit down with real estate investors, and a lot of them are not paying attention to this capital gains tax because truth is when you pass away in Canada, it's something called a deemed disposition. You're deemed to have disposed of all your assets at fair market value, meaning the government wants a tax bill on all your second properties, your non-registered investments, and your corporate shares, even though you didn't sell them yet. So my grandfather passed away in 2008. He was an accountant who moved to Alberta. He bought a whole bunch of properties. He put them into holding companies. He bought real estate, and he died in 2008. My father was the executor, and guess what we had to do to his properties in 2008? We had to sell them during a recession in distress while trying to grieve. My father was the executor because he was the eldest. My two uncles, one in Singapore is a commodities trader. My other uncle is a home inspector in Toronto. They had a very high expectation for my dad to close this estate fast. He couldn't, so they ended up fighting, okay? To this day, they're still withdrawing dividends from a corporation because they don't want to pay the dividend tax up front. Had my grandfather put a life insurance policy into the corporation, we would have been able to strip all that money out the corporation tax-free, and they probably wouldn't have fought over this stuff. Okay? So life insurance can be a powerful tool if you know what you're doing with it. The problem is a lot of people don't know what they're doing with this stuff. Okay? So be careful. Calculators to calculate how much life insurance you should need. Different type of policies out there. So there's term and there's permanent. Okay? So term insurance, think of it like renting a house. You don't use it, you lose it. It's cheap up front. But this chart shows you that if you keep on renewing it, I'll never let you do that. But if you kept on renewing the term, it'll end up costing you a lot more money at life expectancy. Okay? And then there's permanent plans, like whole life plans. Think of that like buying a house. It's got a cash value that you can access while you're living, just like equity in the house, right? So the way you access money from these is you leverage against them because it's tax-free if you do it that way, and paying interest is cheaper than paying taxes. And you've got a guaranteed way to pay that back because you got the life insurance, right?
What does the cost difference look like for term and?
Yeah, so for this example, I think this is a 40-year-old for $1 million, costs him like $40 a month, but he lives to age 85, he'll end up putting $1 million in that policy, which doesn't seem plausible, right? And then a whole life policy, like an 8-pay, you pay for 8 years, he'll end up putting like maybe $20,000, $30,000 a year for 8 years, but then he never pays ever again. And if you look at his life expectancy, he ends up putting like $200,000-300,000 for $1 million. So the truth is, the term insurance is the cheapest upfront because you're less likely to make a claim. In fact, you have a less than 5% chance of making a claim on a term insurance policy. Life insurance companies love selling you term because they rarely pay out claims, they just collect premiums, okay? Permanent insurance, they know they got to pay out, okay? So if you give them the money up front, you get a greater discount. So the policy that's the cheapest up front ends up being the most expensive if you live too long, and the policy that's the most expensive up front ends up being the cheapest if you live too long, okay? You just have to make sure you know what you're doing, or the person you're working with knows what they're doing, right?
And you normally when you're working with a client and you're looking at their health and looking at their finances,
Right.
we know that some of those things come into
Yeah,
play,
yeah.
right?
So I always tell people, at least get term insurance, lock in your insurability. I had a 26-year-old marathon runner. She wasn't sure. She got the term insurance. Next year, type 1 diabetes out of nowhere. Oh, yeah. I don't know where that came from, right? I have so many accounts of I have like a 3-year-old in my practice, cancer. Like I was like 3-year-old get cancer, right? So lock in your insurability because if you don't, you're not going to be able to do a lot of these things I'm going to show you. Okay? Life insurance is simply buying tax-free money at a guaranteed discount price. When I deliver a claim check to a beneficiary, it's money, it's tax-free, it's worth a lot more than what they paid for, okay? It's just tax-free money. I basically showed the person they could buy, a 40-year-old could buy $1 million tax-free guaranteed for like $300,000 spread over 8 years. That's all it is, right? You're just buying tax-free money. Not everybody can afford permanent life insurance, so be careful of agents who try to sell you a lot of whole life permanent life insurance. You're just trying to earn a commission, right? You should probably have mostly term, a little bit of permanent insurance to pay final expenses. You should only buy large permanent policies if you have a lot of extra money, you've maxed out your TFSA, and you're paying taxes on your investments, okay? Which one is the best policy? The one that's enforced when you pass away. Unless you can tell me when you're going to pass away, nobody knows the answer to that question. Is it term insurance? Is it permanent insurance? Depends when you pass away. You got an 80% chance of living past age 80. You should probably have a little bit of permanent, okay? Just don't overcommit yourself. One of the only ways you can lose money with permanent life insurance is if you cancel early. Unfortunately, that's how most people lose their money. They overcommit, okay? Term insurance is really cheap. You can lock in your insurability. It allows you to convert it, even exchange for a longer term. I usually recommend just get a 10-year term life insurance policy. Most people, they don't keep it for 20 years if the agent's doing their job properly, and you can convert these plans to a permanent or exchange them for a longer term without a medical. So why pay 20-year rates if you're not going to keep it for that long? I would only do that if your health has declined and you don't want to redo medicals. One company in particular, Manulife, has a special health rewards program. This makes sense. They're one of the few companies that are profitable if you're healthy, so they want to keep you healthy, right? So I'm with Manulife. They gave me a free Apple Watch. So if you like wearing devices, if you don't like wearing devices, this is not for you. But basically, if I don't exercise enough each month, they'll charge me for the watch. So it motivates me to exercise, okay? So it's good for me. Yeah, you can. Yeah. They'll give you a free Apple Watch, but you got to exercise for it to be free, okay? Other perks, they give me 50% off 2 hotel bookings at Expedia each year. Every week, if I hit my exercise goal, I get to spin the wheel. I've won at least 10 to 12 gift certificates, ranging from $5 to $12. So it is a little bit more expensive than a normal term policy, but if you use it for its health benefits, it will pay for itself. So here are different areas in Canada you can invest in. You got a pension plan at work that you may be forced into, RSPs. Be careful with RSPs. Don't buy more RSPs than you're going to spend in your lifetime. If you leave RSPs to an adult child, CRA will tax it as income. We'll probably give half of it to the government. Yeah.
I have a question here for you. So with the life insurance for critical, do they have any critical? Is the premium going to be higher than if someone that's non-healthy?
Yeah. And you know what the thing about that is? If your parents or siblings' health has declined, it may affect your rates. So that's why we say do it. So even when everyone's healthy.
What happens if you have a significant other spouse that was born with it from like a young age?
Spouse doesn't matter. It's more your parents and siblings. Like I had a case, a client, her mother had cancer, so they excluded cancer from the policy because her mother had it. Yeah. Okay. So it's best to do this stuff when you're healthy, right? And when you're young, when it's cheap.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But if like I said, if somebody, your significant other, or spouse, or someone, and you want to get a term for that.
Yeah.
But some insurance companies will turn you down because of what you have. Do you offer anything like that?
Yeah, there are guaranteed plans that you can buy regardless of your health, but they're usually more expensive. So depending on your finances, it's either going to be a mix of that or maybe saving your own fund as emergency fund and taking care of your health, right? Okay. Yeah. RSPs, they're fully taxable when you withdraw from them. So only buy RSPs if your employer matches. It's free money, okay? But don't buy more than you're spending your lifetime. I actually work with a lot of accountants to get rid of this problem because there's a big problem with a lot of professionals. They have a lot of RSPs that they're never going to spend in their lifetime. TFSAs are great. This is a little bit outdated. The limit is actually 109 now if you've been in Canada for a long time. And then exempt insurance is the only other place you can invest tax-free, okay? King Solomon said divide your portion into 7 or 8 because you don't know what misfortune would befall the earth. Diversify your investments. Majority of Canadians today have like 80-90% of all their assets in real estate. Let's hope this doesn't end up like Japan. In Japan in the 1980s and 1990s, they lost 70-60% of all their real estate value. And they went into a balance sheet recession. They ended up paying all their money into debt and they didn't spend any money in the economy. And they just came out of negative interest rates like last year. It was so bad they were paying Japanese people money to borrow money. That's how bad it was, okay? So hopefully, you diversify your investments. Be careful of owning second properties because of capital gains tax. It's not really passive. The government's your silent partner. You're going to pay taxes on the rental income, and you're going to pay another tax when you pass away or sell that property, okay? I'm not telling you not to buy real estate. I'm going to show you a sequence on how you should buy it, okay? So I've maxed out my TFSAs, my RSPs. Yeah? When you're in a lower tax bracket, that's when you should withdraw from your RSPs. So if you have no income, yeah, start withdrawing from your RSPs. But if you have non-registered assets, you may want to withdraw from that first because RSPs can grow tax deferred up until age 71 when they force you to start withdrawing through a RIF. You have to pay tax on that full amount. So another reason why you shouldn't buy too much RSPs is because if you got a pension at work, you have CPP, OAS, and you cross over 95,000, you're clawed back on old age security. If you make over 148,000, you got to pay that full old age security back, which is over $8,000 a year.
So where does RSP benefit you?
The RSP benefits you when you're in a high tax bracket now and when you're in a low tax bracket later. But most people don't know if that's going to happen or not, right? So it's usually like really high income earners that benefit the most from RSPs. Yeah. So once you max out your RSPs, TFSAs like me, you have nowhere else to invest except exempt insurance. If you don't do this, you're gonna end up paying taxes, and CRA will be your silent partner. So what I do is I literally have like 20, 30 life insurance policies. I put all my money into it because I don't know where else for me to put the money. If you know somewhere else, please tell me. Okay, so dividends. So if you have non-registered dividends, it gets grossed up, and that's the number they use to claw you back on old age security. Non-registered taxable dividends are the worst things to earn when you're retired. You should hold those in your RSPs or TFSAs, okay? And then obviously down the list are more favorable investments that are less taxed. Okay, you might not be able to see this. It's kind of small numbers, but you can see it later. But basically, this is the policy I bought when I sold my house. So in 2021, I sold my rental property. I was netting over $1,000 net cash flow after taxes, which is really good cash flow, but I was renting to like 8 tenants. And then one of them got bed bugs. And then I recalculated everything and realized, I'm working a lot harder for less money for no reason. Why am I doing this? So I just sold the property. I had no mortgage on it. I sold it for under $1 million, paid off my mortgage, and I invested just a third of the money into this policy. This is a specially designed insurance policy where I buy the minimum amount of permanent life insurance policy, and I have a 10-year term rider that creates all this extra deposit room. So it's like creating a tax-free account through the life insurance. Yeah, you had a question? Dividends, yeah. So if you're earning non-registered taxable dividends, they get grossed up on your tax return, and that's the number they use to claw you back when you're retired on old age security. So try not to earn taxable dividends. Try to earn tax-free dividends in the RSP or TFSA.
Is that through stocks and...
Stocks, bank stocks, yeah. Mutual funds, yeah. ETFs. Okay, so this policy I bought, I'm basically buying the least amount of insurance possible to maximize the tax-free room, and the tax saving pretty much pays for the policy itself. You can't see this here, but I'm basically, in my 5th year in this, I'm putting like $41,000 into it a year, and then by the 3rd, 4th year, it's worth my value. So it's one of the fastest policies out there, one of the highest cash values. So if I don't like it by the 4th year, I just take back my money, and I have free insurance for the rest of my life. Right? What's unique about this is I didn't understand this stuff when I was early in my career. They were like, why do you have to borrow your own money? I didn't realize that you're not borrowing your own money. You're actually borrowing the insurance company's money. They contractually have to give you the loan. You don't have to qualify for it, and you don't have to pay back till you pass away, and that loan does not show up on your credit bureau. So instead of me taking my money and buying another property, I park into the insurance policy. By the 4th year, I take back their money, and my money continues to compound tax-free in this policy. So I created 2 uses of my money instead of one. Yeah. Okay? So I'm using their money to go buy property. This money is sitting here compounding tax-free. By year 8, when I'm paid off the policy, it's increasing cash value by over $22,000. That's more than my rental property already. I don't have to manage any tenants. I don't have to fix any property. I don't have to pay taxes. This is really passive. Really? And I can use this to go buy other property now without affecting my credit. Use their money as a down payment, and then now I also have the life insurance to pay the final tax liability on all my second properties. So if you want to buy multiple properties, this is the way you should do it. In fact, this is the way how JCPenney, Ray Kroc, who started McDonald's, Stanford University, a lot of these guys, this is how they started their business, from borrowing from their life insurance policy. Okay?
Is this the same concept that we're hearing nowadays? Infinite banking.
Infinite banking, yeah. This is the exact structure they're using in Canada in infinite banking because they can't beat it with anybody else. I bought 3 of these myself, right? So
you gotta be real careful with who's setting these up for you.
Yeah, because if you don't set it up properly, it's a mess, right? If you don't know what you're doing, yeah. So this is very specific, and this is not for everybody. Most people will not do this stuff, right? You gotta have like a lot of non-registered savings, or you sold a house to do this. Most people would just buy a small policy, buy majority term, and invest the difference, right?
So what would you say for, again, individuals with children, compound interest?
Yeah.
How would these type of policies will be?
Yeah, for children, because you can't do a TFSA until they're 18, you should set up a RESP, Education Savings Plan. The government gives a 20% grant for every dollar, up to 40% if your income's lower. If your income's low enough, you don't have to put a single dime into it. They'll give you $2,000 per child. And all that money goes tax deferred, and then it's taxed in the child's hands when they go to school. So besides that, once you max out the RESP, which is $2,500 a year, I buy one of these policies, like a smaller version. You can't buy such a big one for a child. I pay like a couple $100s, a couple $1,000s a year into them. But I'll show you later. It's one of the most tax efficient ways to leave inheritance to your children's children.
Yes.
Okay? It's almost like a tax-free trust. Okay. This policy has dividends. These dividends are based 40% on mortality and another 40% on investment return. Most investments are pretty boring but rewarding stuff, so it's very stable. They smooth the return. So if there's a bad or good return any year, they smooth it out over a 5-year period. So the end result is you get a very steady dividend every year. It averages about 6 to 7% and is tax-free. If you compare that to the Toronto Stock Exchange, it almost averages the same, but it's less volatile and less risky than a government bond, and it's tax-free. This is why I put all the money. Yeah?
Sorry, I'm trying to understand all of this. I'm listening to you, and it's like blowing my mind because if I've had life insurance policies previously, some have lapsed, and then some I probably still have. I don't even know. But if you don't have somebody who, I find I don't know. I find that we as a community, I'm just gonna say how I feel. We as a community, as Black individuals, we don't know any of this. So how do we even know the question to ask? Because when a person is coming and we're confiding or entrusting them to sell us what we need based on our needs, I've never heard of any of this. Like, I've never heard of any of this stuff. I've heard of Manulife because I've had Manulife insurance through a corporate job that I had. And you put away, they max, but going in depth like this, I've never.
Unfortunately, my industry is, we have like really low competency. My industry, unfortunately, is so bad. I do this stuff for other advisors. That's how bad it is. So unfortunately, it's really just who you know at the end of the day. And most of the people who are doing this stuff are wealthy individuals anyways, right? So you're not going to hear about this from everyone.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? You gotta look at the mindset of, is the master gonna tell you how to get out of debt, right? They're not gonna tell you what to do. So most times in this situation, we got to be proactive on how we protect ourselves. We have to look at how individuals are using these situations for their good, right? And then be able to see how we could, retroactive or, find ways to work around that. But again, as you said, find the right person that will have your best interest at heart.